Hi, I'm Marty Nimco. Today we turn to romantic relationships for the brainy. Um, I can be optimistic about brainy people finding good relationships because they have the brain power to solve the inevitable problems that exist in relationships, as long as you do a few things. And we're going to talk about that. How to go about meeting the right person, how to go about assessing the person, and how to solve problems. And then we're going to end up a little bit talking about if you decide to stay solo. So where to meet? Um, Normally, your equally brainy friends who know you and colleagues are probably the best source of intellectually compatible people. And intelligent compatibility is probably more important than even sexual compatibility in a romantic relationship because that ensures mutual respect in the inevitable, as I said, arguments and issues and decisions that have to be made. Um, so starting with your peers, because they know you and they're your intellectual peers, more likely to suggest people who are compatible. That said, they only know a small number of people, and so of course online isn't a smart approach. But don't dumb down your intelligence because you're going to want to meet your intellectual peer. So no need to be stuffy and over intellectual, but write intelligently, thoughtfully, although concisely. Intelligent people sometimes have a tendency to be too expansive and discursive. So keep it concise but smart. That will tend to turn off the wrong people and turn on the right people. Um, Also, in person, again, when you want to meet a lot of people in quantity, so you have plenty to pick from. One of my favorites is to go to a conference that's attended by people who are likely um, your peers, and again, who would be both intelligent, really intelligent, because again, we're talking here about this is the relationship advice for the super brainy, for the super smart people, um, where similar people would likely be there in quantity. So it could be medical researchers or nonprofit executive, conference of nonprofit executives, who tend to have a little bit bigger heart than generally the more pecuniarily oriented for-profit executives. Uh, Conventions of college professors, academic, associations, or my personal favorite, even though they're maybe on average a bit less brainy, but they're generally so kind and curious and interesting people, librarians. If I were single, I would probably go to a librarian convention. There'd be hundreds of women in my case. I would like to meet a woman who are intelligent, like to read, like information, and generally are giving in spirit and not just money oriented. And so that's how I'd go about trying to meet people. But critically, no matter how you're first meeting them, do trust your first intuitions. Very often, intelligence and kindness, as well as sexual attractiveness, is apparent, right away. And we tend to say, "Oh, I'm going to give him a chance," or "Maybe I can fix him," or whatever. Very often, especially if you're quite a brainy person, that first impulse, it's a concordance of countless uh, oh pieces of knowledge that you're acquiring and intuitions and whatever. Rarely is that first intuition based on the first, sometimes 1 minute, but certainly 5 minutes. Uh, there's always more fish in the sea, but focus on assessing both on all that intellectual compatibility, kindness, and sexual. Also, other things that are really important, and again, it's too easy to think emotionally and hormonally, but you really do want somebody who is reasonably employed. One of the other reasons that couples argue is because of a power imbalance, because one person is making most of the money. And in today's society where it's really hard to live a middle class existence on one income, you want both of you to be earning a reasonable income. It doesn't have to be the same and all, but not the $20,000 a year teaching flute lessons part time. Um, and the other, I want to stress again the real huge advantage of being with someone who is your intellectual peer. Um, I guess I said it before, so there's no real need to say it. I'll just re-stress it. There are infinite decisions that have to be made. And when you've got two great brains working to solve them, it's much more likely they'll get solved well and not devolve into the emotional screaming and fighting. It's not to say that intelligent people don't fight, but your odds are much increased if you are finding somebody roughly equally brainy to you, but also being kind, sexually attractive, reasonably employed, and not high maintenance. I mean, if somebody is deeply depressed, has serious mental health issues, is unduly materialistic, is addicted to drugs or spending or whatever, that's a formula for failure. So try to keep thinking with your brain, not with your hormones, and you will often make a wise choice and solve problems well. But finally, a word about being alone. Some people increasingly are choosing to say it's better to be alone than in a relationship, because a relationship by definition is compromise, especially if there's children, but even if there are not. So it is not unreasonable today, especially if you're brainy and making a good enough income, decide that you're going to, be largely so. Nobody says you have to be a hermit or a complete recluse, but spending most of your time alone and then dating and seeing platonic friends, etc. I just think that is perhaps an under-considered option, where there's still, even in this modern era, where there are people who somehow think that the next stage after you, say, graduate college or whatever, is you got to get married and have kids. It's been said that kids are the ultimate sacrifice of 18 of your best years of your life. So anyway, those are my thoughts. As usual, I welcome your thumbs up and, if necessary, thumbs down. I always like your comments. Especially like it if you hit the share button and share on your social media. And I'm flattered if you choose to subscribe to my channel. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.